Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, I don't think we could have a more important topic than it's winter energy costs. Let's talk about energy assistance programs. The folks from the Energy Association of Pennsylvania will join me. But first, we're honored to have the Pennsylvania Secretary of Corrections. Let's talk about subjects like the decline in the prison population. Should you hire reentrants from the state prisons? We'll get to that after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, we have a bunch of important topics that we're going to take up, and I think we need to get to them right away. Sitting across from me is the Secretary of Corrections, the Pennsylvania Secretary of Corrections, John Wetzel. He's been on the program before. All right, Mr. Secretary, here's what we now know, because your office tells me so, that we have fewer people. There's a decline in the population in Pennsylvania's state prisons. Do I got that right?
You got that 100% right, yes.
The number you put out was there are 46,000 people right now in our state prisons, and there's been a drop in prison population. Well, what's causing it?
Yeah, well, let's start with in 2012, under the Corbett administration, the population hit its apex at 51,700. So we're down nearly 6,000 inmates. And that wouldn't be good news if crime wasn't down, but crime's down also. So in the past year, population dropped another 1,500. So we have less people, and what that means for taxpayers is less expenditures.
Yeah.
But again, I think the key thing, if you look over the last 20 years, crime's down 45% over the last 20 years. So we're heading in a good direction.
Do you have any understanding about what's causing that?
Well, it's not.
Is it more employment, fuller employment? I mean,
I would think it's a myriad of factors. I don't think it's a simple. I don't think there's a silver bullet. I think when you think about what contributes to someone coming to prison, you think of education, lack of education, you think of addiction, and you think of mental illness are the three big drivers of criminal behavior. Yeah. So any enhancement to education is grassroots crime prevention. So both Governor Corbett to a lesser extent, but Governor Wolf, early childhood education, for instance, is one of the key factors in reducing criminality.
You hit on a subject that is growing, I think, in importance. We have this homeless problem, particularly in big cities, but it exists virtually everywhere. And the argument is that a good bit of it is obviously caused by alcohol and drug addiction, but the other situation is mental illness. How important is mental illness in the sense of the inmates in the state's prisons?
It's critical. Right now, 1/3 of our prison population is on the mental health roster. And
1/3?
1/3. And Pennsylvania's not an outlier. I really think when you look at areas of public policy, the biggest area that we should be ashamed of is the fact that so many of individuals with mental illness end up in the criminal justice system. And it's really an argument to really focus on bolstering the behavioral health safety net.
Yeah.
Governor Wolf's announcing or requesting in his budget request an increase in expenditures for vulnerable populations. And with this population, it's pay me now or pay me later. But pay me now means making investments to keep people healthy in the community, which I think we all want.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, a way to prevent it. But I actually, when I got the statistics from your office, it didn't surprise me. And then the more I thought about it, what did was the percentage. But let's move on. As I'm going to read these from your office. Here's what's down: assaults, property crime, burglary, larceny, even murder a bit. But we read all this stuff about the big city, not just in cities, but about the murder rate. Take it.
So I think if you look over 20 years, crime's down, all those are down. Over the past several years, the two categories that are up slightly is murders and rapes.
Murders and rape.
Now, rape is some of that's definitional, and some of that's the Me Too movement. Fortunately, people are feeling safer to report. When you talk about murder in particular, 27% of the population in Pennsylvania Department of Corrections comes from Philadelphia. And we know that
biggest city.
Yeah, and we know that over the past year, murders are up in Philadelphia. Yeah. But when you look at it historically, again, over 20 years, it's down significantly. But, you know, what sells newspapers, what leads, you know, they say if it bleeds, it leads. And so you know, we have a bias when we hear that all the time. We overestimate how much violent crime there actually is.
All right, I want to run to a break. When we come back, there's a very important subject that needs to be addressed, and that's what you all have called re-entrance from the correction system, meaning hiring people who've been released. I won't even get into the question about whether felons should vote or not. Maybe we'll touch on that before we leave. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Well, if you're just joining us, my special guest is John Wetzel. He's the Pennsylvania Secretary of Corrections. We're talking about a lot of things that relate to prison, their population, and I want to turn to something, Mr. Secretary, that's pretty important. 20,000 people are released from state prisons each year, according to your data from your office. That's point number one. Point number two, and I think this is important, these folks, and this is a word that I've not used very often in my life, re-entrance.
Yes.
So you leave prison, you re-enter society, and these folks want to find employment. They have families in some cases, so...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a critical issue, and it's a critical issue in the context of historic low unemployment rates, right? So if you're an employer right now, and you're going to not hire someone with a criminal record, you're eliminating 1/3 of the applicants. 1/3 of Pennsylvanians have a criminal record, right?
Wow.
And so how those numbers really translate as far as people getting out of prison is we're going to release 20,000 from state prisons. County jails across the state are going to release about 200,000. So if you're trying to employ people, and we hear from employers all the time that we have more jobs than employees, you know, it makes sense to take a chance, take a calculated risk on somebody coming out of prison.
Qualified employees, I mean, they're, you know, people still looking for work, even though unemployment is down. It's a question. So here's a question. Should there be vocational, maybe you have them already, vocational programs in prisons? Maybe not in county prisons where folks are, you know, incarcerated for a couple of weeks or a month, you know, some months, but not for long term, so that when they come out, or at least programs when prisoners are released, re-entrants, that provide training, or could maybe they could go into conventional programs that already exist?
Yeah, both happen, actually. At the state level, we have over 90 different vocational programs, from fiber optics to culinary arts, where people get a ServSafe certificate, to even, we have a program that develops optical technicians, people who make glasses, which is an in-demand job. And one of the things we've done over the past 3 years is really focus on where an individual is going back to and looking at what the job market in that area looks like, working with our partners at Labor and Industry, and actually providing vocational training specific to the kind of jobs they can get back in the area. So to employers, if you have a need, especially if an area has a specific need, we have the ability to train people while they're in prison. Wow. And the reality is, you're already investing money. It doesn't make sense to invest money to just warehouse someone. Let's make that investment pay off, and let's have somebody get out and turn from a tax burden to a taxpayer. And employment's a key piece of that.
All right, talking about people who get, what about the parole system? I mean, there's a lot of activity now and a lot of news stories about probation and parole. Let's talk about the obvious one that you would be your offices would be involved with, your operation would be involved in.
Yeah, that's state parole.
State parole.
So why it's in the news, especially in Pennsylvania, is in spite of the fact that we're known as a state that's reformed a lot, Pennsylvania has the number five as far as the number of people under probation and parole in the country. We really use it a lot, and a lot of the talk in Harrisburg right now is around abbreviating the length of probation and looking specifically at probation, technical probation or parole violations, meaning no new charge, but a violation of a condition of parole that results in someone getting returned to prison. And those are the two areas that the reform legislation is really seeking to do. As far as the length of probation and parole, one of the things that was concerning when we looked at it is that oftentimes the length of probation does not co-vary with the risk of the individual. So it doesn't always co-vary with the severity of the crime, and that doesn't make much sense.
All right, unfortunately, we're out of time. I wanted to get into the prison deficit, the budget deficit, and all of that, the governor. But I can always have you back. You know, you can always come back.
Absolutely. Just give me a call.
And we can talk about
You know my
this.
number.
Yeah, I got your number. All right, here we go. The Energy Association folks are here, and we're going to talk about energy bills. We're going to talk about a whole variety of things, energy assistance programs. Couldn't have a better time to do that in, late January? We'll be back.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Well, there's probably no better time to talk about energy costs with winter upon us and the ups and downs in the weather. And joining me to talk about that are some folks from the Energy Association of Pennsylvania. Donna Clark is sitting across from me. She's the Vice President and General Counsel of the aforementioned association, and Nicole Luciano, she's the Manager of Policy and Research with the same organization, the Energy Association of Pennsylvania. All right. Folks can't pay their utility bills. It could be whatever the utility is. They can't pay them. They're having trouble. They don't want their energy shut off. What do they do about it?
Well, the first step probably is to contact your utility. They have a lot of in-house programs that can help you, whether it's budget billing, which kind of helps you spread out those spikes. Like right now in the winter, you're trying to keep everything warm. If you spread that out over the other months, it won't be as expensive. But if you're low income, you qualify for a lot of other assistance programs, including the National Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program.
So first you go to your utility. Mm-hmm. But the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission also has requirements, you're the lawyer, has legal requirements for, programs that utility companies are supposed to have in place. Is that correct?
Right. The energy utilities, which would be your gas utilities and your electric utilities, all are required to have certain customer assistance programs in place. So there's a program in place that is called CAP that provides customer assistance program.
And that doesn't mean CAP like making financial contributions to campaigns. No. We have to be.
No,
we want to get that clear.
You're exactly right. Well, that program provides assistance on your bills if you meet the income eligibility requirements. The companies also do a energy efficiency program called LIHEAP, which is for low-income families that will help winterize or make your home more efficient. They also, all the utilities, the energy utilities also provide what they call hardship funds. So when you look at your bill, and whether it's PPL or UGI or Columbia, and they ask you to contribute $1 and then they match it, those dollars go to help your neighbors in need who are struggling to pay their bills. Whether it's low-income folks or folks that just are having a momentary struggle, those programs are available to help you pay your bills and keep your utilities on.
Yeah, we'll get into a couple of them in a minute, but I have to ask the question, energy, you talked about two in particular, right, gas and electricity. are energy costs up or are they down?
They're actually pretty flat right now, and the federal government expects for them to be pretty steady throughout 2020 and even into 2021. So that includes your energy prices, gasoline prices. They expect it to stay right around $2.60 throughout the year. Right.
Now, we have this tremendous expansion of natural gas in our state. As a result of fracking, we now export it around the world. Is natural gas increased in terms of the household and commercial use? Is there an aspect of that that's important here or not?
Well,
I mean, I'm talking about supply.
Yes, yes.
The supply, does that potentially bring down the cost?
Yes, it does. In fact, it brings down your electricity costs because a lot of our electricity is generated by plants that are fueled by natural gas, and natural gas is low cost right now. So it helps not only if you use natural gas directly, if you heat your home with natural gas, but your electricity costs are down and steady, as Nicole said, because of the abundant amount of natural gas available here and across the country.
Yeah. So overall then, it looks like you say it's going to be stable, but there still are programs that are necessary for. Do we have any estimation, either one of you, about the number of people that are having trouble paying their utility bills? Is there?
Well, the PUC, the State Utility Commission, requires that all the energy utilities go out at this time of year. Actually, they start in the fall, and they contact all the folks who have lost their utility service over the course of the year for various reasons. And they estimate that this year there's about 18,000 households that are that went into the winter that started in December that had their service off. Now, what the utility does in that case is they're making concerted efforts. They have to contact by phone, email, and even a house visit to say, hey, how can we help you get turned back on for the winter?
Wow. So it looks like that's going to continue to be a problem. I mean, with the numbers of people, even though the economy is good, you would think that there'd be fewer and fewer people, but it's still a problem for thousands of Pennsylvanians.
Yeah, and in fact, probably tens of thousands of Pennsylvanians.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah,
wow.
I think when you look at the numbers of people who participate in customer utility programs, I would think it's probably across the state in the aggregate over 100,000 households.
All right, well, let's run to a break. There are a couple of programs that I want to talk about that are particularly important, and we'll do that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Welcome back. We're having a discussion about energy costs and utility bills, and all of this gets very important given the fact that we're we're not quite in the middle of winter yet, but we're close to it, and it's going to stay cold for some period of time. All right, before I get to a program known as Low Income Energy Assistance Program, otherwise known as Home Energy, LIHEAP, I want to talk about one aspect of the situation that we're talking about is to develop what's called budget billing. What's that about?
Right, so that's something you can enroll with either your electric or your gas utility, and that you don't have to be income qualified for. You can sign up for it or disenroll from it at any time, but what it helps you do is average out your bill. So again, in the summer with your electric bill, it might be really high in June, July, August, and then you don't really use as much, or with your gas at this time of the year. And it helps you spread that out so you can better budget for your home energy costs, so there's no spikes.
So we tend to have two periods. In the summer, it's about air conditioning, and in the winter, it's about home heat, whatever we're using, right? All right, I've heard of this program, and I think you folks have been on over the years to talk about what's the acronym is LIHEAP. What's LIHEAP?
Well, LIHEAP is actually a federally funded program, so all states participate in it. Most of the time it's cold weather states, and it's dollars that are spent. You apply for LIHEAP because you're struggling with your energy bill, and it helps reduce your energy costs. LIHEAP also has a component which would help people who are qualified to, like, say, fix their furnace or fix whatever they use to heat their home. So it's a federally funded program. And then you compare that to what Pennsylvania provides, what all the utilities provide, which is a customer assistance program.
Right.
So LIHEAP the federal government, Pennsylvania gets somewhere in the neighborhood of $173 million a year,
Wow.
which it spends to help people pay their bills throughout the year.
Is there an income threshold?
There is an income threshold. I believe it's 150% of the federal poverty level.
Okay.
And I'm not going to know the numbers off
That's
the top
all right.
of my head.
I have no clue what it is.
But you can contact your utility, you can contact the Department of Health and Human Services, you could contact your local county assistance offices. They would have the applications, they would know all the information, and
So
they could help you enroll.
The summarization of this, before we go on to another important subject, has to do with there's assistance out there.
Right.
And folks have to access it, but before they can access, they have to know about it, which is
Right.
hopefully what this program is going to assist people in determining that. So is that a serious problem, the fact that people don't know about these programs, and who in the heck is helping them? I know you are. But
Right. It's hard. I mean, you think of your utility as an entity that sends you your bill and you pay it and you continue with your service. But they are out there in your community. They are trying to help those folks who are struggling either long term because of their income situation, or as Donna mentioned, because they're having some sort of catastrophic event. And they really do want to help. There are a lot of people, customer service agents and folks within the utility that want to help you get connected to these programs.
But as far as notifying the public, the utilities work with county assistance offices. They work with organizations like out in Western Pennsylvania, Dollar Energy. They work with local organizations that reach out to people who are in need of help. The PUC has a lot of information on its website about customer assistance programs. I think your state representatives and state senators' offices would be a good place to go. There are fairs that all the utilities run in their service territories as we come into the winter to provide information to senior citizens and other people in the community. So yes, a big part of what we like to do is educate, and we partner with a lot of organizations to do that.
All right, one other topic, and that is energy supply. I thought all along that with the increase in natural gas, that electricity, that people would be moving away from electricity and onto natural gas. I don't know if that's true or not. So let's first of all talk about electricity supply. Why is that important?
Well, because Pennsylvania is a deregulated state, what that means is your utility company doesn't generate the electrons. So you can go out on the marketplace and shop for electricity. So the PUC runs the PA Power Switch website, and if you go to that website, you can compare offers. And basically what that does is you can buy renewable energy if you want, you could buy solar, wind power, clean energy, and those are the electrons you could buy, and your utility is still delivering that energy to your house. So all those benefit programs still apply. They're the people you still call for a safety concern, but you're buying your electrons like on the free market, and you can sometimes get a better deal than from your utility company.
Yeah, so is electricity use up or down?
I think it's flat. It's fairly flat, and it has been for a while. I think people are, and part of the reason it's flat is because of efficiency.
Right.
Yeah,
all of our
point.
appliances are more efficient, our heating is more efficient, even though we're using a lot more electronic devices.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great update. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, you stay well.